Next up, we've got Nemaura Medical. If I'm not mistaken, yes, that's correct. Dr. Faz Chowdhury. How are we doing, Faz?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you for asking. So for the folks that are not familiar with your firm, could you please tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys do?
Oh, yes. We've essentially developed the world's first non-invasive daily wear glucose sensor. So it's a wearable patch. You apply it on your arm, and every few minutes you get your glucose profile on your mobile phone. And of course, this is a game changer, both in the field of metabolic health, obesity, weight management, and of course, importantly, diabetes management.
Very interesting. And do you have a presentation for us today?
I do, yes.
I'm very excited to see this. This sounds very unique and disruptive.
Super. I dive straight in.
Okay, so you should be able to drag your presentation onto the current screen that you have shared. Yep, almost there. You had it on the screen, and then you just got to go into presentation mode.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Super. Okay, well, thank you very much for that introduction.
Thank
you. Right, so first of all, just to mention that I will be making some forward-looking statements. So by way of introduction, as I just mentioned earlier, we've developed what is the world's first daily wearable non-invasive continuous glucose monitor, or CGM. And this is a Class 2B CE mark approved medical device. So far, we've launched this product which we've branded SugarBeat. And we've also launched another program, called Beat Diabetes, with a view to managing diabetes, either to prevent diabetes or manage type 2 diabetes or help reverse type 2 diabetes. In addition, we plan to launch this year a mass market direct-to-consumer metabolic health application. And I shall be speaking about each of these in more detail. So to start with, what's the problem that we're trying to solve here? So obesity and diabetes, these are collectively two of the key drivers of the chronic disease epidemic that we face today. You have over almost 500 million people around the world with diabetes, and that's a combination of type 1 and type 2. And approximately 90% of those are people with type 2 diabetes, i.e. a condition that is primarily dictated by lifestyle, diet, etc. And so the total addressable market is a substantial market. Our aim as a company, having developed the platform technology, we took the active decision not to go out there and just sell sensors and just be another device company that just sells sensors into the space. In order to add what we believe will be substantial shareholder value, we've decided to package it together with digital applications and other things in order to help either prevent, manage, or reverse type 2 diabetes. That's our objective. So our solution in terms of how we intend to do that is basically, first of all, to empower users with knowledge. And that knowledge is essentially derived from our device and our sensor. So you get your daily profiles, and based on that, you get guidance, you get insights into the extent of control over sugar levels. And I always use this analogy that using finger prick testing, which is what the bulk of people have been doing, is rather like looking at the share price of any particular company at a specific point in time of the day, and trying to decipher from that what happened before, what happened after. The point is, you don't know anything about what happened before, and you cannot predict what will happen after. So it's the same with your blood sugar level. Just having point-in-time measurement is relatively benign. What you really need is a full profile over the course of the day. And the idea here is that you now have a way of doing this in a very affordable and flexible way, i.e. it's daily use. You don't have to stick a sensor in your arm, and you don't have to keep it there for multiple days. Engagement, and by that what we mean is we have created digital programs and a digital ecosystem with a view to keeping the user engaged for the long term. This is not about a short-term fix it for a few weeks and then leave people to their devices. And the outcome we expect in all of this are obviously a reduction in various things that metrics by which we measure disease progression in diabetes, like HbA1c, blood cholesterol, blood pressure, and sustainable weight loss. The idea is to get sustainable results over the long term. And the approach, as I mentioned earlier, that we've taken is threefold. One is real-time glucose monitoring on a daily basis. Second is a program called Beat Diabetes, which we have launched in the US so far. And this is a digital program for managing diabetes with a view to either attaining substantial control over diabetes or reversing diabetes. And this is supported by our technology platform for glucose profiling. And thirdly, the metabolic health program that I also mentioned that we will be launching towards the end of the year. So items number one, the CGM and the Beat Diabetes, these we have launched. And the mass market consumer metabolic health program is in beta testing, and we plan to launch that this year. And just to mention again, in terms of the market size, unfortunately, I mean, it's a vast market. It affects a large number of people, and currently there are, if you combine just UK, Germany, and US, you have almost 50 million people that have diabetes. And in the US alone, currently, almost 28,000 people are diagnosed with diabetes every single week. So as a result of that, the impact on healthcare is phenomenal. And on average, what you find is that approximately a healthcare provider or insurer will spend on average 2.5 to 3 times more on a person that has diabetes than somebody who doesn't have diabetes. So of course, you can imagine the cost burden is also quite substantial to both health insurers and the economy and employers alike. And what we believe is that we have a highly cost-effective program, both in terms of the device and the digital application, that could well be a game changer in terms of both providing something that is now affordable and that can be deployed to the masses, but also by virtue of the flexibility of not having to stick a sensor in your arm and just keep something on the surface of your arm for up to a day at a time, or 12 to 14 hours at a time, that could well bode very well with the users, who then don't have to be lumbered with the device for multiple days on the trot. So I will go now very briefly into each of the products, the SugarBeat CGM, the Beat Diabetes program, and the Consumer Metabolic Health program. So SugarBeat, as you see there, that transmitter is worn on the arm. The sensor sits on the surface of the skin. We do not insert a sensor inside the skin. That is the key differentiator between our device and competitor devices. And with the competitor devices, you have a filament that is about 1 centimeter long that's inserted in the skin using a rather large needle. And that stays on the body, on the arm, for between 10 and 14 days. In our case, the device sits on the surface of the skin. The sensor is a bit like a Band-Aid. It sits on the surface, and you peel it off and you throw it away at the end of each day. And as I mentioned, this is a CE-approved Class 2B medical device. So you apply the sensor on the arm, you see the glucose fluctuations over the course of the day, and the objective is that that knowledge will empower you to make the appropriate decisions and to help physicians and carers to help you make those decisions to be able to better manage your condition. And one of the key benefits regarding looking at your profile as opposed to just HbA1c is that, if I move to here, is that you could have exactly the same HbA1c, yet completely different glucose profiles over the course of the day. And what is becoming now the gold standard of monitoring this condition or measuring the condition is actually to look at the time in range, i.e. what extent of time over the course of the day do you spend within a narrow band, because that is far more important than just a HbA1c value, for example. And the more fluctuations you have, the worse the long-term prognosis is, and that's why it is so important. And of course, this then allows you to do that, and it gives you that insight as to what is really happening inside your body. In terms of where we are with sales on SugarBeat, we recently announced that we have we worked for many months with our UK licensee, and as part of the soft launch, which was extremely successful, they have now placed orders for 200,000 sensors, and then 100,000 approximately per month on a rolling forecast basis for the next 2 years. And those are the initial estimates, and we expect that potentially to be a lot more than that. And so that's in full swing. And then the other thing I would mention is that even in the UK, our UK licensee has taken the approach not to just go and sell sensors, but to sell it as part of a diabetes management program, which is provided on a subscription basis. In Germany, we are discussing now partnerships and collaborations with some partners that we've identified that we believe would be the ideal partners moving forward. And we also submitted for reimbursement to the GBA. The good news is that they've come back and said the GBA do not need to do a full review, and it can go straight to the National Association of Statutory Health Insurance Funds, which means that it will make the process a lot quicker. And we expect that to be 3 to 6 months. And so whilst we are finalizing our collaboration plans, we hope to get reimbursement in place. And of course, as soon as then an agreement is signed, we intend to start selling into Germany, which is, of course, the single largest market in Europe. In the Middle East, we have had a partnership with a company called TP MENA, which is backed by an $8 billion group in Saudi Arabia. And the registration process there is in full swing, and we expect that registration to be completed in due course. And on completion, we will then start selling devices into that territory as well. Briefly on Beat Diabetes, we launched this program in the US, and we have two aspects to it. One is our device, which will do glucose profiling to indicate how lifestyle factors are affecting your glucose levels. That is being combined with a clinical program we in-licensed that was originally developed at the Joslin Institute for Joslin Diabetes Center, which is, of course, one of the leading centers of diabetes research in the world. And we've combined the two to what we think bring to the market is a compelling product for the both management and potential reversal and stabilization of type 2 diabetes. And in terms of the glucose profiling I mentioned, the objective behind that is based on sound clinical evidence that has been demonstrated in the past, whereby they've shown clearly that by doing glucose profiling, by just doing 7 finger pricks a day, 3 to 4 days at the end of each month, has provided enough data to provide guidance to patients to then make improvements for the subsequent month and so on and so forth. And that's really the principle on which we're basing it. So the key message there is that we are not reinventing the wheel. If anything, what we're doing here is we are automating, making easier, making scalable a process that is already well demonstrated for the management of type 2 diabetes. And the current status is that we've already commenced a pilot in the US, and we expect up to 200 participants. And that pilot we plan to run for up to 2 years. And the idea is to gather feedback and data and to basically support our marketing development with insurers and employers as we move forward. And of course, we anticipate multiple additional parallel pilots in the near term. So metabolic health, finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about. We've intentionally decided to develop a product for metabolic health. Why? Because if you add it up in terms of the obesity market, weight loss market, pre-diabetes and diabetes, you've essentially got almost 1 in 2 people that are potential customers for this product. And of course, we are empowered because we have the device technology that allows us to sell a service like this to the market. And there'll be more about that in due course. As I say, we're in beta testing, and we do plan to launch this year. In terms of future products, we have continuous lactate monitoring, a sensor we've developed, and we are doing studies on that before we look at launch dates for that. And then there's temperature monitoring and also alcohol monitoring, cortisol monitoring, potential drug monitoring. And these are future pipeline product opportunities that we will be looking at actively. In terms of the team, we have been building a world-class team now that we are at that inflection point of generating revenues. And so far, our senior level appointments include people with experience from companies including Dexcom, LifeScan, Roche, AbbVie, and Eli Lilly. And of course, we are being very selective in terms of the individuals that we bring on board. And the idea is that to build those teams to be able to support both our direct-to-consumer launches as well as to support our partners and licensees around the world. So in summary, our UK launch is in full swing. With census ordered and projections given. We expect a partnership with a partner in Germany and other EU territories in due course. We're targeting broader adoption of the Beat Diabetes program I mentioned that is being launched in the US. And we expect broader adoption by insurers and employers, and we're engaging in those discussions as I speak. And by the end of the year, we expect certainly to have some significant parties on board, at least doing pilots on our program. And the device I mentioned is a CE mark Class 2B approved product. We also filed a PMA in the USA, and that is in review. So we expect to provide updates as well on that in due course. And of course, the metabolic health program. So over the course of the months, and certainly before the end of the year, the market can expect to see what we consider to be a compelling proposition for the B2C market with a one-of-a-kind sensor, which really provides a significant USP for us when we get into that market. And from a financial perspective, we are fortunate to be in a very strong position with over $31 million on the balance sheet as it stands. And we've always had a very low cash burn rate, and currently it is still less than $2 million per quarter. That's all I have to say. So I shall revert back to any questions that there may be.
Wonderful presentation, Faz. Thank you. So we do have a couple questions. Given your current cash on hand, do you anticipate a dilutive cash raise of any type this fiscal year to meet current delivery forecasts?
Well, as I mentioned, our balance sheet is very strong. Our cash burn rate is very low. Combine that with the fact that we are now essentially going to be reporting revenues in due course. So we do not therefore anticipate the need for any dilutive fundraise whatsoever. And even going back, even if I go back over the last year, bear in mind the bulk of our fundraising, despite the opportunities that were presented to us for dilutive fundraisers, significant dilutive fundraisers, we did not take the cash. We took clean debt. And there was no dilution. And at this point in time, I can assure you we have no intention of taking dilutive fundraising.
Beautiful. All right, and then this will be our last question. When do, and if you can answer, that's great. When do you expect a response from the US FDA and approval as guidance was for?
We're in discussions. The review is happening. When I look at the Abbott Libre, Abbott is a very large company, and the amount of time it took, I guess it's right now we don't have a clear indication of timing. But as the discussions progress, I do hope to be able to be in a position in the coming months to be able to inform the market of exactly where we are and what we anticipate that approval timing to be. So I would rather not make a premature guess at this stage.
Fair. So given that our audience is comprises retail investors and institutional investors, what is one thing that they should keep in mind when they think about your company?
There has been a lot written about non-invasive monitoring. The one thing people forget is that technology moves on. And through incremental advances in technology, we are able to then develop new products, new applications. And this is essentially what has happened. And so there's always been speculation about, well, what's the feasibility? Well, we've proven it. We've now validated it. We now have a product, the first of its kind, out there. We're now selling it. We have purchase orders. And so what you can see now is that leading on from this UK launch, there will be other territories that we will be launching into gradually, steadily, and we will be generating revenues. Not only that, we have a product that the likes of very large companies out there with tens of millions of user bases would certainly like to get their hands on the device for metabolic health applications. Yet the USP is the device. We can easily wrap around the digital application around it, and that's precisely what we've done, rather than dilute the value to us as a company. So therefore, as investors, they can expect to see some quite exciting things over the course of this year, I would say.
Yep, I can hear the sound of hundreds of investor imaginations being stimulated by that statement. Thank you so much, Faz, for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.